Why, hello there. A nice day here. I hope this video finds you very well today. Uh, I'm here, I think. Kind of out of it today, a little bit. I mean, maybe I'm not actually here. Maybe it's all simulation. In fact, I heard this, philosophical sort of conclusion. I mean, made by smarter people than I, I'm sure, where if a simulation, if we can meet a certain amount of memory, basically, and complexity for a simulation, then to create one that emulates real life sufficiently enough, the odds of us actually being in a simulation instead of reality are higher due to the ability to replicate such a thing, which is just kind of an interesting thought, but I don't know where I'm going with this. Just anecdotal nonsense that I have decided to spew at the moment. What are we getting into? We're getting into a full review that has nothing to do with anything I've just been talking about. This is the Kizer. Well, maybe it does. It's sort of an inception, considering there's so many versions of the Sheepdog at this point, but this is the Kizer C01C 2.9 Sheepdog in the drop point variant. I did a review of my original Kizer Sheepdog. I've done a comparison between Sheepdogs that talked about just general stuff in Kizer. You can check that out. I'll link that. Yeah, I'll link that down below, I guess. Two, it's interesting, as there are a number of things that are improvements and downgrades kind of almost at the same time, which is weird. But this is the budget version of this knife. There are multiple versions, which I will talk about in just a minute. But first, let us get to specs. Dog, why are you trying to open the gate? He's he's a miniature dachshund. He's small. He is very good at getting through gates. Don't know how he does it. Well, I mean, I know how he gets past this one. He literally moves it in a way where he pulls the wings that sort of hold it in position. Yeah, he's a fruit bat. Where were we? Knife. True to its name, it's 2.9 inches of blade. Hence the 2.9 in the name. Yeah. Okay. They went pretty literal there. About 7 inches and maybe an eighth. Not certainly not a quarter. Maybe like 7.12 kind of inches, kind of thing like that. About 4 and an eighth in the handle, maybe just a tiny bit over, which of course adds up pretty decently. Let's do some comparisons so you don't have to rely purely on these stupid numbers. Comparison to our resident small comparison knife, the Civivi Elementum, and our resident full-size comparison knife, the Civivi Conspirator. I forget if the Conspirator is technically a budget model, but it's right around right around that area, and this is definitely a budget model, and a popular one, something I think most people, or a lot of people, would have some frame of reference on. 3.5 inches, 3 inches of blade. It is, I mean, it is technically a tiny hair larger than the Elementum. From my angle, I can see where the lines where it hits on them. It's all in handle, though. The blade should be, approximately 0.1 of an inch shorter. Because this technically, while they always say this thing has like a 0.84 or something like that blade, if you actually measure all the way back, it's pretty much 3 inches. This is definitely underneath that in length of blade, but it is above that in handle. So, something to be considered. Basically, if you have knife law limitations, this will probably be okay before this if your length is under 3 inches. Handle grip length to our resident 2AA batteries, as everybody can, check out 2AA batteries and see if they can get their hands around it. You have about 1 3/4 AA batteries for your primary grip, but you also have a choil here. You can definitely, I can get my full forefinger grip even back here, and I have about, what is this? My hand is about 3.8, 3.9 inches back here, so I can manage it. It is a bit tight, but I know a lot of people like small knives anyway, so I don't think you're going to have a problem with this one, as it is pretty reasonably designed, and the Sheepdog overall is a good design, so is what it is. Weight of the... I almost want to call it the mini Sheepdog, but it's not. There is a mini Sheepdog, but yeah. 2.84 ounces. Very light. Very, very light. Definitely more than just barely more than an ounce of inch, technically. But it does have good ratios. Bringing out the calipers. Thickness of the handle, 0.429, so under half an inch. And with the clip at its highest, where is the clip at its highest? Probably right here. That's one thing I don't love. When clips continuously grow higher and are highest at the apex, I mean not at the apex, but at the end of the clip, that never usually makes for the most comfortable clips, yet it does work here. I will give them that. Just under 600 thousandths of an inch, over half an inch wide there. Oh, why am I putting away the calipers? 110 thousandths blade stock. Behind the edge. 13 thousandths. Approximately. It does definitely taper and get thicker out of the front. I mean, you can kind of see where the front end, I mean, that's definitely not 13 thousandths, which is different than the old Sheepdog, but I talked about that in the comparisons. I'll go over a couple of important points here again, but for the most part, you can see that one if you want to see what's changed and where the advantages are and stuff like that. Hardware check. Where's the hardware check stuff? There it is. Why is that not going in? Because that's a T9. That would be why that's not doing that. Where's my T8? Oh, it's in where the T9 should be. I took the wrong one. Okie dokie then. Whatever. T8 pivot. T8 body screws. T8 pocket clip screws. T8 all array around. Kizer does indeed listen to that, and they have more often than a lot of companies implemented that. So I can appreciate that very much. T8, one size, you're good. I believe that brings us to the end of our actual specs. Oh, why is that? No, it's not. Okay, sorry. Distraction. Now, drop point, of course, there is the original variant, sheep's foot version for the Sheepdog. Both versions can be gotten in all of the new variants of this thing. But there is, of course, the drop point bitten added, so I wanted to check that out. It definitely gets thicker up the blade faster than the original variant. I can't, of course, speak to what the sheep's foot variant of this does. I assume it might get a little bit, a little bit faster just due to height of blade, but it's probably a little bit thinner. However, right behind the edge, they're pretty consistently the same, new and old, so not a problem there. D2 blade steel right there, very small. Sheepdog logo, name of knife for some reason, which, I mean, or code or whatever you want to call that, and the Kizer logo. I don't really mind the logo there. I don't think that needs to be there. In fact, yeah, it really doesn't need to be there, but it is. Oh well. The plunge grind is really hard to see on this sort of, you know, heavy matte sort of cement stonewash. I really think it's coming awfully close to the edge, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, this one gave you a little bit, the originals gave you a little bit more life than that. But on this drop point, it's very hard to tell where exactly it is, but my guess is it's based on what I can actually see with the shadows and everything like that. It kind of looks like it's right about here, which doesn't give you that much life, which is unfortunate. However, you can, of course, expand that or push that forward a little bit if you start getting a smile. And it'll just increase the size of your forward joil a little bit, which might be nice, actually, considering this is a small knife. Thumb stud actuation. not a thumb hole, but the thumb studs are out of the way, so no problem there. There is jimping on the spine. It does absolutely nothing. The original one had jimping that actually did a little bit of something. This one does not. It's just there for, I guess, aesthetic tactility or something. I'm not sure. It doesn't do anything. Function-wise, it is a perfectly fine drop point. And it's a good-looking drop point. It actually works. I wasn't sure in person how this would look, considering I'm so used to the sheep's foot, but yeah, it's not bad. Moving on to the handle, this particular version is a crossbar lock, which I'll say right now is a weaker crossbar lock. I said this in my comparison video when I was talking about Kizer in general. The crossbar lock on this, while it still carries very nicely, is definitely, even moved to the strongest position, which is it is adjustable, it is definitely weaker than some of the crossbar locks from Kizer, particularly my drop bear, that I've handled in the past. I don't know if the more expensive ones have better springs. They should probably use the same springs across the board, but yeah, this is definitely a weaker crossbar lock than my old, like, first edition drop bear and everything like that, which is a bit of a shame. Yeah, it definitely comes out a lot easier. I mean, I can do that with the drop bear, it just takes a lot more effort. There's also a tiny bit of wiggle here, just a tiny bit of, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, it's a crossbar lock, right? It's not lash, it's mostly just sort of like where the bar sits. But it is there just a tiny bit. It's definitely not as well executed as my drop bear, but the drop bear is also a, $100+ knife in its standard configuration. This is what, $45, $50? Less than half. Well, I'll link it down below, by the way. I'll link the couple versions of these. In fact, because the new one came out in the cheapest version, the D2 version. Then there's a step up. I believe it's Nitro V blade steel. And you can get, like, micarta and stuff like that. You can also get it in button-operated top liner lock variant. And then there's the most premium version, which is pretty well priced for the most part. It's over $100, but it's got L-Max blade steel and, again, like the good micartas, and you have options and stuff like that. And aluminum up there. I believe they have options for aluminum up there as well. Really, I can see them being worthwhile in the top operated liner lock more than this lock, just because you'd be taking the risk of is their crossbar locks actually weaker or not. I mean, you'd find out real fast, but you might not be happy with the answer. I don't know. So, I mean, I just gravitate towards the button top operated liner lock in general, more so than this, just because of how unimpressive this particular crossbar lock has been. See, just doesn't really have that hold to resist and get the throw, but it does work. It's fine. It's certainly not worse than many others that have been out there that are more spongy, but whatever. Handles here are G10. They are not contoured like the originals. I don't know if the micarta variants are contoured. You don't really feel that much of a difference because of just how much rounding has actually been done on the edges, but the flat itself at the center is not contoured. So I don't necessarily think it's doing irreparable damage here, but yeah, it would be a nice touch. The G10 is finished decently. There are steel liners throughout, which is pretty impressive considering they managed to keep the weight down. I know it's small, but still. There's a lot of extra pieces going in here, and they still managed to get it down pretty good. Dog. Pocket clip. Pocket clip is fine, except it has a giant flat at the end. Kizer seems to have standardized this pocket clip on a couple different models now. Don't love it. It does work. It does work all right. But as always, that flat at the end is just sort of like hit or miss. Are you putting it in super thick pants? Are you putting it in like thin pants that sort of bunch up underneath it before it gets going. It's just kind of weird sometimes. It is a deep carry clip. It does function. Flat screws. It is reversible, for this is an ambidextrous locking system. And in fact, the top button liner lock is a very ambidextrous locking system as well. So it's nice that they gave you that, where like on the original they didn't. Honestly, not a ton to be said. It's pretty straightforward. The stop pin for the open position is up there. In the closed position, it's, you know, the bar, so you're good. The grip is surprisingly comfortable. I can just barely get my forefinger grip on there, as you can see. The choke up I was worried about because of the angle and everything, but it's actually quite comfortable, and I don't even feel like, when you grip into it, you sort of grip into this part. At least I do. And I don't really feel like I'm going to rotate into the edge, so it feels pretty safe and secure and pretty darn comfortable. The pocket clip is good in the hand. You don't really feel it. I do think there is a major downside in the fact that these sheepdogs keep getting smaller for some reason. I talked about this again in the comparison, but the original one is like 3.3 inches. Then they came out with they came out with a mini one, which is smaller than this, is 2.6, and then the XL. But everyone since those initial 3 dropped has gotten smaller. The crossbar lock variant that came out for this one a while back was 3.1 inches, and now this is 2.9 inches. So they're not really offering people who like to have a more substantial knife the option to get it in the new configurations, which is maybe a bit of a miss. I wouldn't mind seeing just like a 3.4 inch and this 2.9 as being your 2 standard sizes. But did I say 3.9? It's 2.9, whatever. But, I mean, that's a whole different argument. It is centered. They could probably actually just straight up get a little bit more blade in there. I mean, that might be not something they can do if you put the... I wonder if that's that way because of the sheep's foot variant, and they just want to keep the blade length the same. That's an entire possibility, so I'm not going to put that as like a negative or anything like that. Really, the only negative here that is of any substance is the weaker springs. Everything else is, like, okay, different blade shape, slightly different geometry, fine. Nice choke-up position added. Yes, you lose a little bit of the blade, but it is comfortable, and it is kind of necessary for this smaller knife. If they did a bigger one, maybe they wouldn't need that, but whatever. You lost the contouring. It's still rounded enough that it's super comfortable. Pocket clip is, I mean, how many companies do a pocket clip like this? Like 80% of them? Let's be honest. So can I really be like, oh my god, no, I wish it was different, but it isn't. Overall, it's a solid little recommendable budget knife that, again, I would get in the button-operated liner lock version, but yeah, it's solid, and there are a few options with non-corrosion resistant D2 steel. You'll get a little bit better edge retention. I believe, again, Nitro V for like $10 more. Totally reasonable. And then the LMAX, and I think there's some titanium in there and stuff like that, and aluminum and good micarta and everything, that being over $100. If that's what you're looking for, it'll be fine. I don't necessarily know if I would gravitate to that over the Nitro V model. I mean, you're definitely going to get more edge retention, and LMAX is a better steel in general, but I don't know if it's like world-ending that you have to spend an extra $50 or so to get the slightly better version of this thing, but maybe there are some other differences, and someone who has experienced them all can tell me what they are. I don't know. I'm not about to drop, $180 to review just the same knife over and over again. Sorry, I don't have that much money. I'm a small channel, which, by the way, you can help with by liking and subscribing if you would so kindly do. I'm going to end things here, say thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you got something of value out of this, and have a great day. I hope to see you in the next one. That's it for me. See ya.